Hello, everyone. I almost forgot how to go live. I'm looking around this shit like it's brand new. How y'all doing this evening? Welcome to the Rational Radicals. I hope Skip and I got confused. We thought we were supposed to go, it's like we go every first and third Wednesday. So, but, it's extra Wednesdays, and some months have more Wednesdays than others. So we were prepared to go on last week. And then I caught that, and I'm like, oh no, it's not till next week. So I hope he remembered, because so we may need some staff or somebody to help us keep it in order. Good question. I hope we can return to Black Power Media sooner than later, but that's kind of up in the air. But Rational Radicals, irregardless of where we at, it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. So hopefully we can work our way back over there. We just have some things we have to work out. So, but I'll keep y'all updated. But any which way it goes. Okay, Skip's coming through. Any which way it goes, Rational Radicals, me and Skip ain't going nowhere. Oh, okay. He's fathering his children. I keep telling him that's so not rapper. I'm trying to help Skip become like a real modern MC, a modern rapper. He won't get face tattoos. He won't stop fathering his children and just get out here in the streets and do what you're supposed to do. He just won't follow the rap formula. So none of us get paid. It's whack. Anyway, how y'all doing this evening? I guess I'm gonna just jump in with both feet. Skip is good at improvising and freestyling, so he can get on when he's done with his offspring. But today's show, if I'm correct, is Revolution in Retrograde, right? And my headphones sound funny to me, so if the sound is good, good. If not, please let me know, because I sound funny to me. I just got to make sure. Oh, crap. Hold on. Give me 1 second, ST. Okay, here we go. Let's just jump in with both feet. This is going to be a bit uncomfortable. But first, let me tell you why I wanted to do this show. I've been hearing some disturbing things coming from some people I respect, some people that I think should know better, coming from the masses, the unwashed, faceless horde of the black masses. But I've just been getting it from everywhere. it used to be these type of thinking was somewhat limited to a limited scope of the black community, what you would call the black conservative or the black bourgeoisie, or what's really is black reactionaries and black race traders. And what I'm talking about is basically regressive, because when I say retrograde, I'm kind of playing with people always talking about Mercury and retrograde. And whenever something's in retrograde, people say, well, people are going to start acting crazy. People are going to start being, unreasonable. They're going to start acting out of character. They're going to start, not only amongst doing engaging in behaviors that will ill affect them personally, but those around them and those who care about them and those who engage with them. So when I talk about retrograde and all the shit they say about when Mercury's in retrograde from an astrological point of view, it's like Black revolution is in retrograde. When we hear about Black liberation struggles within the United States and even the diaspora, I hear so many diverse thoughts. Like, everybody's a revolutionary. In this day and time, everybody's pro-Black. Everybody's down for the cause. Everybody wants Black power. Everybody's down for reparations. I remember when reparations was limited to the Black progressive, Black left. The Black conservatives and Black reactionaries and right wing would say that Black reparations is begging for a handout and all that shit. But we were warned back in this. Way back in 91 or 92, Khalid Muhammad has said that there was a new Negro emerging. And what he said the new Negro was a Negro who had the same sentiment of the old house slave, the same sentiment of the reactionary Black race trader. They had no interest in liberating Black people, empowering Black people, or even acknowledging that Black people are distinct, separate, or hostile to the white majority. And these Black people thought that the only path forward, the only salvation, the only way Black people will ever be fully human is to mimic and fully submerge ourselves into Western culture. That Black people should embrace their American citizenship, their American identity, the English language, and find parts of European history where we made this contribution in military and in the sciences and governments and UN ambassadors who negotiate for every other nation except for African nations and Black nations. So they were, back in the day, they even wrote books, openly hostile to anything that was considered back in the day African-centered, Black radical, Black militant, Black separatist. They were openly hostile to it. And they would say, I ain't no African. You colored folks. They even resisted being Black. I'm a colored man. I'm not Black or white. I'm an American. But Khalid Muhammad back in the 90s had observed. Because we hear Khalid advocate and organize for revolution, but we forget that he was also a scholar. And he said you have this new Negro emerge, where the old conservative, the old anti-Black Uncle Tom House Negro handkerchief head race trader was going to adopt the aesthetic and the rhetoric of the Black militant, of the Black left. So these Black people would say, well, I'm a proud African. They might even have African names or give their children African names. They will wear African garb. They will show up at the Kwanzaa, or they will show up at a Moja Karamu, or they'll show up at the Juneteenth celebration, or they'll show up at the various Black August events, and they'd be first in line. And will proudly profess that they're proud African Americans. Because first they were like, I'm a Negro, I'm colored, I'm not an Afro American, I'm not an African American. Now they say I'm African American, I'm a proud African. They have all the same rhetoric that we got. So now it's not even easy to distinguish. Even these type of Black people will even say, I'm a revolutionary. But their goals are the same. The complete fusion of Black people with the white majority in this country. I think a good example of that is Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle can hang out with revolutionaries and have pro-Black rhetoric and then kick it seamlessly, go back and forth between revolutionary black people, and some of those revolutionary black people I have a lot of affection for, so I ain't gonna say their names, but Dave Chappelle can hang out with conscious black people and then seamlessly go hang out with right-wing fascists. You can hang out with conscious progressive black people, progressive leftists like Talib Kweli. I said a name, I'm sorry. Like Talib Kweli, and then seamlessly go hang out with Joe Rogan or go on tour. You can go on tour with Black Star. You can go on tour with Black Star and then go on tour with Joe Rogan. You can show up in a Sheun Kuti video and then show up on stage with Elon Musk. This is the new Negro. Now, if you might confuse that with the new Negro of the 1920s, of the Garvey era, that new Negro was the Negro who was no longer afraid of the hangman's noose, of lynching, of the KKK, the new Negro that says freedom of death. Now, that's a different era. That's a century ago. So there was an effort where black people in this country have an ongoing revolution, an ongoing evolution as well. So I'm talking about the new Negro as Khalid Muhammad described. As Khalid Muhammad described. And so we started getting confused. There was a time in the black community where it was very clear who was leftist, who was right-wing, and who was essentially apolitical. Keep your head down and just keep them moving. There was even names for them. For the passive, not engaged, don't bring no trouble around here, I'm just trying to get by. And those camps were pretty clear. And people generally were proud to profess. It was a time where you call someone an Uncle Tom, the Uncle Toms tried to redeem the title Uncle Tom. I know, I hate this, but Claude Anderson tried to reform and redeem Uncle Tom. So he went to the book Uncle Tom's Cabin and said, actually, Uncle Tom was a noble black man. Actually, Uncle Tom was the good, it's the Sambo. See, we should be against Sambo. But what he didn't point out is Harriet Beecher Stowe, this white woman, Uncle Tom was a noble black man from the point of view of an affluent white woman. Uncle Tom was a good black man in terms that he behaved in such a way where he would get pats on the head, or the ideal manifestation of a black man from an affluent white woman. So I'm not trying to live up to the standards set by Harriet Beecher Stowe as to what a good black man is. So Sambo was a villain, but when you look, the noble Uncle Tom was not a hero. Just because Sambo was a villain, we confuse that. But all that to say, as the methods and techniques for disrupting black people, of preventing black people from developing the ability to organize, to identify who we are, identify who our enemy is, and then properly and organize against our oppressors. There's been so many lines crossed, so many lines blurred, that we're now very confused about who's who. We're very confused. And it's really hurting us as a people. This confusion, this bleed over, this messiness. You got black people who can't tell, don't know if Kanye West is a hero or a villain for black people. Can't tell if Bill Cosby is a victim of a conspiracy, a white conspiracy, or an anti-black race traitor. I even see debates about Candace Owens. Well, Candace Owens, she says some good things sometimes. She says some good things sometimes. So I'm pointing out this problem in this issue because there's another component of this problem in this issue. Because when these black Uncle Toms pretend to be down for us, what they're really doing is trying to attract us to a right-wing reactionary perspective. And when they attract us to a right-wing reactionary perspective, another way to say reactionary right-wing is to say fascist. There's a lot of manifestations of the reactionary right wing, but ultimately fascist, right? And one of the key components of fascism, because fascism isn't so clearly defined, and the reason why fascism isn't so clearly defined is since World War II, no fascist wants to be a fascist, just like no racist wants to be a racist. It's like Claude Anderson said, I go all over this country in my work, and I see racism everywhere I go. Everywhere I go in America, I find racism, but I don't find any racist. There's a pretty decent book called Racism Without Racists. It's a bit dated because they didn't even group past that, but you can go all over America. You can come home to me with Kansas City. You can come back to me with Kansas City. And it's some Jim Crow shit. Like literally. You look at the black part of town and it's a shanty. It's a shanty. You see burned out blocks and blocks of burned out, hollowed out buildings that's been there since the 68 rebellion. And you go to the white side and it's Shangri-La. But I got to take you to Kansas City for that. You can come to Chicago and I'll take you to see that. You know, I'll take you to Chicago and show you that. So, but ain't no racist. You go to Kansas City. Extremely racist city in Kansas City that's in an extremely racist state, Missouri. In an extremely racist part of the country, the Midwest. In an extremely racist country, the United States. On an extremely racist continent, North America. And it's probably about a half a dozen people. Oh, yeah, I'm a racist. I love racism. You will find maybe a dozen racists. So, anyway, these fascists, black people get tricked into, manipulated into, indoctrinated into fascism. And one of the chief characteristics of fascists is that they have a longing to return to a past that never existed. That's all Make America Great Again is. Because did he say it's not, if they said Make America Great, you couldn't call it a fascist movement. You couldn't call it a fascist movement. I ain't saying it would be positive. But you saw movements like the Great Society movement or the New Deal. Not saying they weren't racist. Not saying they weren't imperialist and reactionary. But they couldn't be defined as fascists. Because fascists, like, look at Hitler's Third Reich. Right? You look at Hitler's Third Reich, he was going to be like, what was the First and Second Reich? He was saying, I'm going to return Germany to a time in our past when we were great. Right? If you look at the OG fascists, Benito Mussolini, my wife and I were in Italy. And she had a conference where she went into the conference and she was looking at the architecture. And she was like, wow, look at this. Is some really intricate old world architecture. You know what I mean? This is some old Greco-Roman style architecture. And an Italian woman came up to her and was like, man, fuck that shit. And she was like, whoa, what's your problem? Why you hate this old school shit? This Roman column and this Roman sculpture. And he's like, that's not from the Roman era. That's from the Mussolini era. Mussolini went around Italy and was making, in modern times with modern tech and modern architectural techniques and building materials, and trying to construct shit to make it look like it was made in the 10th century BC. Because he wanted his shit to look like the old world Greeks and the old world Romans. You'll find every single fascist reactionary movement has this fantasy about returning to some history that never existed. And they never tell the whole truth about that history. Right? And I saw this emerging in the African-centered movement, where black people wanted to go back, even though many of us, we shared a continent with Egypt. We shared a continent with Egypt. Many of us have no roots in Egypt. And the few of our ancestors that were in Egypt haven't been there for almost 10,000 years. So, since the Greeks came, and then the Romans came, and then the Arabs came, we've been ran out of that shit. 2,000 years ago, we got ran out of that, right? So anyway, I thought that was problematic, idealizing the past. But if you're going to idealize the past, at least they went back to a time that was relatively, could be African antiquity. But these fascists, when they think about the past, they literally want to take you back to a time that was horrible and horrendous, and they pretend it was good. So if you look at the app where Hitler wanted to take Germany back to an absolute monarchy, Mussolini wanted to go back to the Roman era where most people were plebs and slaves. The Zionists want to go back to the old world tyrannic theocracy where people were being stoned for turning a knob on the Sabbath. So even when they want to go back in time, you notice they don't say, well, let's go back in time where we had the Paris Commune, where we had we want to go back to the labor union. They want to go back to the Confederacy, even though the vast majority of these white folks are poor. So anyway, this is infecting black people, right? And so what I'm seeing everywhere, which if you saw the thumb or the little thing I made, what do they call that? The thumbnail for the video. And I show some brothers from Jim Crow era and some brothers from the modern era, stereotypical brothers from the modern era, because there was this image going around that had these black men who looked like gentlemen, black men who had like old world, tweed suits. They looked like they could have been from anywhere from the late 1800s to the mid 20th century, maybe 1950s. 1950s are back. These two black men who were definitely dressed in clothing, old black and white photo, two black men dressed in Jim Crow era. And so you had these two, somebody made this image where these two black men were standing there in Jim Crow era suits. And they were nice suits, fine hats, nice zoot suit looking men from the 1940s, 1930s dressed up. Then they had two black men looking at them. And those two black men that were looking at them had sagging pants. They had gang regalia. They had flags or bandanas. Their pants were hanging. They had on tank tops. They were dressed slovenly. If I can remember it correctly, maybe one or both of them was holding a gun. And this image was flying all over the internet. And black folks like, oh, if we could only go back to the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. We can only get back to the 18. And it's crazy to me how often I see this sentiment. We had businesses back then. We had 70% two-parent household back then. It was all gravy. It was all good. Kids weren't running amok. People weren't using profanity. Little Nas X wasn't born. Sexy Red wasn't born. Oh, if we could only go back. If we could only return. And I'm like, that is fascist sentiment. And it's funny to me that the only thing that black people in 2023 remember about 1923 is the fact that we had a lot of businesses, we had a lot of two-parent households, and our pants were up around our waist. We didn't sag our pants. And what else? And it's frightening to me because there are people who do nothing more, who think the solution for black people is to somehow create conditions in this era that are reminiscent or replicas of that era. Literally escaping to the past, which is literally fascist behavior. They love quoting those statistics, but they never talk about hunger, housing insecurity, displacement, illiteracy or lack of opportunity. You never hear them speak. All they speak on is the statistics that are misinterpreted as positive. That are misinterpreted as positive. And they also isolate those conditions that black people had or lived in from the larger society and the larger global conditions. So if you could return back to when we owned our own businesses, where we had 70-80% two-parent households, and they never say, and we had colonization. And what makes you think these things that you deem positive from pre-civil rights, from pre-desegregation. What makes you think those positive things could exist independently of colonization, dehumanization, lynching, legalized Jim Crow, and all of the negative conditions, sharecropping, massive displacement, gentrification, ethnic cleansing? What makes you think that would happen? Even within those positive statistics, Black businesses and two-parent households, were those businesses profitable for the Black community? Did they generate enough revenues and create enough economic flow so that the masses of Black people were in poverty, were pulled out of poverty? Were those majority Black-owned business? We had our own hotels, we had our own bus companies. Did we? What was the poverty rate? I'm not even gonna pull it up. Go look it up. Go look up the prevalence of disease conditions for African people. I mean, not just modern, like tuberculosis, untreated, undiagnosed, cancers allowed to, but look up nutrition-related diseases, rickets in Black youth. So it is a problem that so many of us, and I know some brothers and sisters, good brothers and sisters, well-intended brothers and sisters that are listening to me right now, in their minds and their hearts. Oh, hold on. Sorry. In their minds and their hearts, are guilty of, at one time or another, looking at the positive images. Why is my phone blowing up? Nobody loves me that much. I'm getting some engagement, but it's not Skip. I'm just waiting to hear from Skip. Anyway, it's hard not to. It's really hard not to. And the second part of that, of fantasizing and lying to ourselves about what the 19-teens, 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and even 60s, what it meant and what it was like for Black people, is it is extremely disrespectful of our many ancestors who sacrificed to change those conditions, to upend those conditions. You know, there was time in the 80s, if you look at the Reaganomics era, if you look at that era, you will find a lot of white scholars, a lot of well-meaning liberals who even said the Negro was better off in bondage. The Negro was better off under white authority. When we had more direct control over their movements, when we locked them into certain areas, when we dictated or mandated that they have certain careers, or that, you know, the vagrancy laws, when we had control over the Negro, because that's what you're saying. When you say we had it better back then, you literally are by default saying we had it better when white people had direct power over us. And it wasn't just, and I know some of y'all are like, oh, white people got direct power over us now. Again, like I said, you got to be mad ignorant of the change. My grandmother grew up in Jim Crow. I was raised by a woman who was raised under Jim Crow, who was born, raised, went through and graduated high school, got married to her first husband, and gave birth to her first children, all under Jim Crow. Yeah, back of the bus type shit. I have an aunt who's still alive to this day. I got firsthand accounts of when my aunt said she would go to the library and colored people weren't allowed in the library. And it's funny because the library she was talking about is on 35th and Prospect. And it's an all Black poor area now. But that Black poor area used to be a white working class area. And she would go over there, and there was a good white woman who would let her come into behind the desk and sit under the desk and read her books. She shouldn't have been in there. And every now and then, this white librarian would take a candy, maybe a mint or some hard candy, and slip it under the desk to her. And she was hidden away, and she would slip her a book from the library. Now, my aunt has went on, a brilliant woman, doctor. She went on to get her PhD, and she went on to educate hundreds and thousands of other people as a university administrator and president. And one day she came in there, and this old good wife, she was one of the good ones. She was like, let me tell you something. Don't you come back here no more. Now, I'm retiring, and so don't you come around here no more. And shooed my aunt away when she was done. And my aunt says, that really awakened my love of reading and awakened to me a desire to read. But it was another almost 2 decades before she could walk in that library. In fact, Kwame Ture said every basic human consideration we have in this country, we've had to shed blood for. Every basic consideration in this country, we've had to shed blood for. Where crackers get up and say, we died for freedom. We died to build our nation. We shed blood for democracy. Black people come up and be like, oh, you died for democracy? I died to drink out of a goddamn water fountain. I died so that I could get equal pay for equal day, just pay for a day's labor. I died so I could be in my own community and engage with my own community without being lynched, without being arrested. I died so that I could hold my head up and look and talk to a white man as a man to man and look a white man in the eye when he addressed me. I died so I could laugh out loud in public. I died so that when when a white man entered into a contract with me and didn't meet the terms of the contract, I would have redress in court under the Constitution. We love to talk about, we died for the vote. I died so I could wear long pants. Read about Mandela Negro men wear shorts. I died to read. Name something that we take for granted today. Name something that we take for granted today. And we want to throw all that away so that we can have more businesses, even though we abject poverty. I don't know what the fuck y'all think businesses are a path to liberation. Businesses are a path to black power. Businesses are a path to poverty. If businesses could bring us out of poverty, why did white people who from day one, since the first dollar was ever printed, before the first boundary of the United States was ever drawn, they had all the fucking businesses. White people have industries. We fight in the businesses. White people have industries. But yet, their businesses is not what brought the white majority out of power. Fortune 500 corporations, multinational corporations. White folks literally invented the LLC. Where black people did that the slutty race trader, slutty vegan, slutty uncle sellout, giving us LLCs. A white woman sat on a throne one day and was like, I'm going to create this thing called a limited liability corporation. And the whole purpose of the limited liability corporation is for wealthy and affluent people to ravage the world with limited liability. And do we even, what does limited liability means? It means I can poison your water. I can poison the water for a whole community as an individual. I can poison the water for the whole community. And My liability is limited. So if you say, hey, we have 500 dead children here from this contaminated water because Bro Diallo owns this factory that dumped this poison in the water, and we're going to sue his ass. And thanks to limited liability, you can't sue me, Bro Diallo, even though I get all the profits, even though I control everything. You have to sue the company. And you can only get what the company possesses. You can't come after my personal assets. You can't come after my children's assets that I'm going to pass down to them. You can't even incarcerate me. At best, you can take away my corporate charter. Can you add yourself, Skip? Oh, look at that. You got the power. I got the power. Now, you can't blame me for nothing. All right, showing up on CP time. Shame of yourself. But anyway, so now black people are out here where LLCs were literally invented to facilitate the exploitation of Africa, the colonization and exploitation of Africa, the exploitation of black labor to create it. And so that the people who engaged in this exploitation did not have to face any real consequences or limited consequences. We have limited liability corporations. Can you imagine a limited liability gang? You know, that no matter how much drugs and violence and murder that they engage in, how much human or sex trafficking they engage in, when the community steps up and says, well, we want redress, it's like, well, yes, well, these are the limits to the redresses that you can have. First of all, you can't go after the hierarchy of the gang. You can only go after the direct shooter. You can only go after so much of the assets and blah, blah, blah. Limited liability isn't applied anywhere else. And we out here celebrating. People go online, I got my LLC. Anyway, just to bring you up to speed, I'm just talking about how black people are basically being fascist when we idealize the past, and how black people look at, quote unquote, every time I say it, I have to do this, the positive statistics of the pre-civil rights black community, where we had a higher level of business ownership, a higher level of two-parent household, lower levels of delinquency, lower levels of sagging pants, or and fewer sexy reds, and homosexuals were relegated to the dark, seedy parts of society. And so, just like fascist white people, reactionary black people long to return to the glorious past that never existed. So that's basically where I'm just admonishing all of our listeners for that.
Yeah. So, let's get to the real important things. You know what I'm saying? Baby boy had 2 goals. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like world changing events.
Oh, which one?
August.
Both of your kids are baby. My son is grown and my other son thinks he's grown. So you can't say that's not specific. Yeah, that's like I'm like my 6 footer made the honor roll.
Oh, you know? Yeah,
like, which one? They both over 6 feet. Like,
yeah, but I think what's most interesting, and it's something that I scrolled the chat for a little bit. Now I will. Oh, hold on, I can just go here, and then boom, yeah.
I don't know if you put power in your hand.
Yeah, right. And I think it's something that we've talked about, we've talked around a good bit, but people really see very complicated problems and they want extremely simple solutions to feel like they're moving forward. Right, like more than anything is they want to feel like a winner. And something I just saw shortly, just minutes ago, was Gilbert Arenas, who wisdom wherever you find it, was talking about he missed some free throws, and in missing the free throws, a reporter asked him a question that gave him some doubt, right? and he wanted to work with someone to help him kind of erase that doubt. And the person that he started working with was some Navy SEAL guy, and he said, for the warm up, we're gonna run to the blue house. Gil said he's running. He looks down, he looks up, he doesn't see a blue house, and the guy notices him looking for the blue house. The guy says to him, if you keep looking for the blue house, it's gonna be a real long run. And ultimately, what people like William Javon is saying is that, hey man, we gotta see that we progressing because we want to feel good. And that's where, you know, your criticisms of religion take root. Like, people just want to feel good. They want whatever the dopamine release is. And if an LLC makes me feel good, like I'm fighting against it because I don't want to be a victim. And it's like, your LLC is not taking that from you, bro. Like, there's still so many things being placed on you. You're not doing the necessary work because it is an academic pursuit. It is an intellectual pursuit. Because what we have to be able to do is really define where we are instead of really trying to just have these feel-good solutions that are non-solutions that are really us spinning our wheels and running in place, you know?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it's funny that ball chasers go into militarist war criminals for inspiration. Yeah. Everything has a military solution in this country. So let's talk let's ask and answer some profound questions from that era that we seem to be grappling with. Have Black people progressed or lost ground since the civil rights era? Since the 1960s?
Okay. What you just said lets me know that apparently we haven't. But home ownership is down. I know that. Like, the amount of land we own is down. Or maybe it's the percentage of people that own the land is down. Nonsense, I think, is higher. Right? Like graduation rates and stuff like that. But the one thing that, just hearing the question that I immediately thought was, what do we call the statistics that matter, and why do we say those statistics matter, and then what are the outcomes in those there? Well, did that make sense?
Yes. But if I had to answer that question, have Black people made progress since the civil rights era? I would say absolutely yes.
Well,
but you're right about.
I do want to say this. That's not what you asked.
What did I ask?
You was like, have we like gone backwards or something like that?
Right.
Right. And I think
have we progressed or regressed since the civil rights era? Right.
Well, we've definitely progressed. Right. But, you know, to what end? So go ahead.
Well, here's the problem with that though. Progress isn't really easily defined.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also circular.
Right. Well, yes, and that's the thing that, and another thing that we seem to fail to grasp is that progress and regression can happen at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
In the West, we're taught that history and human progress is a straightforward linear progression. And even though people say history repeats, they don't really grasp that, because many other cultures look at life and their culture as cycles. As cycles that repeating cycles, as opposed to this is the start of history and this is the end of history. Mm-hmm. And this and we're going along this line straight, and that Western culture is obsessed with this concept of progress.
Mm-hmm.
Is really obsessed with even their what you call it, their self-identity, mm-hmm. their technology. They defined their civilization not how humane they are, not how civil they are, but how much technology they have. Even if that technology is the most brutal, savage technology, is it like complex? So like complexity equals civilization, complexity equals advancement. But anyway, I think we have progressed. And it's frightening to me that African people, because you can't really define progress by home and land ownership.
Okay.
Because let's say you're a black man with a house, 1920 America, or my great grandparents, they had their house in, the house is still in our family. My Uncle Chris owns it now, but it's the family home in Kansas City, Missouri. And my Uncle Gene was raised, my great uncle, my grandmother, my great uncle, and my great aunt were raised in that house, and my great grandmother Nene died in the house. But anyway, let's say you own your house in 1950s America. What level of authority, autonomy, mobility, and status did you have in that house you owned? So we look at what we got, and we don't even look at the quality of it. We don't look at the quality of it. And that house existed within a larger community. And in that community, what was the level of cohesion, cooperation, mutual aid? What vulnerabilities did that household have? What vulnerabilities did that community have? How often was that community set upon? So we look at everything in a vacuum. So you look at marriage statistics or business owner statistics, they don't exist in a vacuum. So if you don't look at the connected larger environment or conditions under which those realities came to be, how do you grasp or understand? How do you grasp or understand whether it was good or bad?
So immediate thought is when we talk about just home ownership. The class I was taking, I was telling you about, one of the things they were talking about is how, home ownership is a good thing because, like houses go up in value. And, I laughed and I said, unless you black. And that has a large part to do with even black people, right? Like not blaming black people, but recognizing that, black people really don't want to live around black people because of the consequences of living around black people, right? So if we're talking about, did you own a home in the 70s? Well, let's go back farther, 40s, right? If you owned a house in the 40s, you were crazy rich. Like as a black person to own a house in the 40s, you was somebody.
Bourgeois.
Right? Yeah, like super, right? But then to go and ask, well, in the 60s and 70s, home ownership, I would assume spiked because of the, like the end of redlining and all the things that came as a result of those changes. But this is where I think it gets interesting. Those properties probably had more value at that time because other black people would buy them. Now those properties are even more distressed because, just thinking about where my grandparents raised their children. My grandfather was a school district administrator. Very funny story. My grandmother had like multiple advanced degrees. And they were able to buy a house for little or nothing. Well, that house is probably worth about the same thing on the market, if it would sell, is probably what they paid for, like the same, $6,000. And the house is not in disrepair. It has a tenant in it now. But people that want to buy houses won't buy houses in their neighborhood. So what is the real value of the asset, right? Like, because you can't sell it. The bank won't really give you much in the interest of a loan against it. So, when we're talking about that, like, what is the net gain from that time, post crack epidemic, post mass incarceration to 2023? Like, what is the real value of that thing?
Well, and here's the thing: the very first house my wife and I ever bought was
y'all about multiple houses
that we lived in. When we left New York because we had a kid and we thought that New York was just too much of a grind, so we moved to Kansas City for a couple of years, and we saved and bought a house in Kansas City with a yard. We wanted to do the front and backyard thing and picket fence, give our child the best start in life. So we bought a house for $32,000. And it was right off Garfield and Linwood. And if you from Kansas City, that's hood. And it was kind of weird because it was a hood that my hood used to feud with back in the day, because I'm from 75th Street, Monroe, East Hills Village, way, way south. And I moved down north, but I had aged out of that shit, and I was never really in it in the first place. So anyway, I wanted to move into my great-grandparents' house. But my uncle was like, well, the house needs some rehab, and it was just too complex to buy the house. So I bought a house around the corner from there. And it was $32,000. And that was back before Obama was president. And now that house is worth over $300,000. When we moved to this neighborhood where we live in now, because we figure we city folks, my wife and I just could not do the small city, small town shit. So we were like, we either gonna move back to New York or let's move to Chicago, because we just couldn't get with that shit. So when we came to Chicago, neighborhood we live in now, the upper price range for homes was we spent a year in Hyde Park, and then we moved over to Bronzeville. And the high end price for homes here was like $230,000. And just a month and a half ago, they just finished a home, one block. You walk up to the corner, cross the street, and you go up to the next corner, and they selling properties for $1 million now. They don't. And when we were living here also, they had the dollar house program where you could get a house and or a lot, adjacent lot, for $1 fucking from the city. Housing prices have absolutely nothing to do with the housing infrastructure. Housing prices in the United States value people, not property. Now, we don't have that other house anymore. I ain't out here like just buying houses. I'm saying where we live, our home, our residence. I haven't leveled up to that. I'm still trying to level up to that. But one thing you will recognize, the reason that house went from 30 G's to, what's that shit, 300,000. The reason property in this area went from the high end, where the Cosby quality Negroes, where lawyers and business tycoons in this community, their homes were 235, 275 on the high end. To have $1 million properties is because white folks is here now. White folks, and my wife and I are literally like, how long can we stay here before black flight? Like, my son is a sophomore. His first year, there was two white students in his whole school. Two white students, a freshman and a senior. And I'm like, okay, next year there'll just be one white student in his whole school. And this year, guess how many?
What we got?
Take a guess. Just throw a number out there. His sophomore year.
12.
Damn. You really trying to get me to black flight? No, not that bad.
Okay. All right. So it got to be 4 or 5 then.
4.
Oh, yeah.
4.
But see, this is the thing, right? So, again, if we're talking about...
But you see them that from 2 students to 4,
yeah,
the housing prices did more than quadruple.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. And
3
also,
more white students at my son's school. I gotta move.
Chicago, I mean, regardless of what people want to say about it, ain't black. Like it just ain't. It just ain't, right? Like the math don't math on it. In a city like Jackson, 80% black, bro. We legit live in the dollar house program. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing that, you know, like my frame is going to be so different in because I live in a place that is so black and so poor. Right? Like it just, there are places in Jackson where there is that, you know, a $200,000 house, right? However, largely, those aren't any places that are anywhere near black people have lived historically. And historically, in this instance, is talking about since the 60s. Like, those neighborhoods are essentially empty. And the city's so black that them places can't even be gentrified, right? Like, it just doesn't, the math don't math. It's just like, it ain't no, you know, a few more artists move in over here and it'll be less black. No, right. Like, and when looking at it through that lens, I can hear you say black people are doing better because of the vulnerability level and, you know, like those things.
That's not why I think we're doing better.
Okay, but what I'm saying is my lived reality, I don't see a material difference in the Jackson of my childhood and the Jackson of my old man. If anything, it's gotten worse because it's gotten so much poorer and so much blacker because of economic flight. Like, black people really believing, you know, and it's something, you know, I hope we get a quick pivot into. It's something, you know, we've talked about my boys going to private school, right? The challenge though is, bro, like, it is, man, it's so hard because it's so bad. Right? Like, it's so bad. And I don't see the improvement. And I'm trying to, you know, not be like, okay, my kid's gonna go to private school. Like, I'm trying to stay and have a good fight and trust that if the things that I've said about education are the things that I believe about education, my children going to private school shouldn't be on the table. But wrestling with that contradiction that everything says that this is bad. But, you know.
Well, I have to say, from my study of history, because I do think that African people have progressed. Mm-hmm. I think that if you want to repress a people, there are several things you can do to repress a people. The Europeans have understood that not only have we as a people made unprecedented, and when I say unprecedented, that means no other group of people have ever done this before. We set the standard. We are the bar. Black people have made unprecedented progress in U.S. society. And I know that is quite a difficult thing to grasp because we're in the thick of it. We're in the thick of it. Like I say, when I first moved to Chicago, I knew a sister C. She was like, I'm sick of walking my kids to school and having to step over dead bodies. And we were in a community meeting, and I was maybe in Chicago a year and a half. I wasn't brand new. And I'm like, man, come on, let's be realistic here. I mean, I know shit is bad, but this is no time for saying fantastical stuff. Let's be realistic. And about another year and a half after that, we weren't on our way to school. We were actually on our way to the gym. My son and I had a gym membership, so we were riding our bike to the gym, and we literally had to roll, not necessarily step over, but roll past dead bodies. Because if you leave the house too early, because of the high rate of homicide and murder, the meat wagons, as they call them, the city morgue trucks. So basically, when they find, dead people in the black community, they just have a rookie cop sit on the body until they can come collect the body. When the body has to sit there, the detective might come up and collect shell casings, take photos. Then the next person comes, and then after all the initial investigation is done, they leave the body there, and a cop or two, they sit around, drinking coffee, cracking jokes over the bodies of our youth, predominantly. And if you leave the house before the wagon gets around, you literally stepping over dead bodies. And so my son had his first, experience in that. I'm like I said, he wasn't on the way to school, but we were on our way to the gym, but it was pretty much early morning, getting my children out and getting their day started. So that's how shit goes here. And it's really ugly. So I understand living that myself and seeing what my people go through. Not understanding, not being able to comprehend that black people have made progress. But here's the reality of it. Europeans recognize our progress to the point where if you look at their policies, if you look at their practices, if you look at their priorities and where they're focused their resources, you don't act the way the white elites and the white majority behave towards us the way they behave towards us if we did not present a threat. They would not work so hard to corral, deprive of resources, flood our community with drugs, write regressive reaction policies against African people in the way that they do. The relentless attack, the relentless subversion. COINTELPRO. You don't COINTELPRO unless there's some intel to code. You can't counter intelligence that doesn't exist. But one of the greatest way to upend a people's progress, one of the greatest way to disincentivize a people, one of the best ways to convince a people, one of the best ways to defeat a people is to convince them to defeat themselves. So this idea that we ain't made no progress, we ain't getting nowhere. Things were better back when white people had the ability to directly and unconsequentially dehumanize us. Where a white man could go on the nightly news or go on the radio and smoking a cigarette and say, hey, there was this colored savage who is about town. Be on the lookout for a primitive looking Negro who's been accused of stealing, or, talking about where you could turn you put your child down in front of the old black and white TV with the big rabbit ear antennas, and you got Tom and Jerry chasing each other around, and there's a big black mammoth, Tom, where Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny goes to Africa, and there's got these big lips, and the cannibals are trying to eat, African cannibals are eating Elmer Fudd, and Elmer Fudd's chasing after Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny puts two big plates in his lips and starts walking I'm telling you, we just don't understand. You turn on Little Rascals to entertain your children. And I know shit is bad. I know shit is bad. I know there's a lot of shit we gotta fix. But one thing that guarantees that we won't fix the problems that have emerged today or that have followed us to the present is trying to escape to the past, idealizing the past. In the past, returning to the past is not an alternative to the present, and it's not a solution to our problems. So my problem is not that Black people are discontent with the way things are now, because I'm not. I'm not content with the way things are now. Even if I reached every level of success as defined for Black people today, own a home, 2-parent household, a level of stability, formal education, condo paid for, no car payment, 785 credit score, all the bullshit we think is successful. If I had all of that, I got some of it, I ain't got all of it. If I had all of that, I would still be outraged. This world would still be wholly unacceptable. Every element, every human connection and communication. So my problem is not that Black people are discontent. It brings me joy and pride. I don't associate with Black people who are content in this world. I don't associate with Black people who are satisfied with the status quo. I can't break bread with them. All I interact with is discontent Black people. But if that discontentment drives us to fantasize, cherry pick, or idealize about the past or seek to replicate the past, those Black people at that very moment become part of the problem. Those Black people who keep looking back to the past, because you're literally saying, well, we need more direct control of African people. And we don't even understand how Europeans, when we got our so-called rights, when we got so-called desegregation, when we so-called took off the shackles of slavery and did away with the burden of Jim Crow, once we got our freedom, they never acknowledged the intensification and expansion of Europeans' direct attack against the Black community. They don't acknowledge that. They like to pretend that once we got our freedom, or once we got equality, once we got the right to vote, and once we got the right to say, hey, get out of this cracker, and dare you to do something, we just went out there and went crazy. Or, I think Bill Cosby put it best. Bill Cosby said we didn't keep up our end of the bargain. Bill Cosby said we marched for our rights. And once we marched for our white folks said, fine, here's the vote, here's school, here's some elected officials, here's some positive media. What else they give us? They gave us all this opportunity and we went crazy with it. We started dancing. They let us get up to the front of the bus and we started, instead of sitting down like dignified civil people, we started twerking on the front of the bus. And we went to Harvard. Instead of sitting down at Harvard and learning the proper lessons and learning STEM and science in Harvard, we went to Harvard and started demanding Afrocentric studies. You gave women freedom and the right to abortion, and they don't want to be mothers anymore. They don't want to be homemakers anymore. They don't want to make a family no more. And so this mythology that literally lets white people off the hook, because you have to understand, when they sat down and said, listen, we don't have an option. We got to sign these civil rights bill. They didn't sign the civil rights bill to liberate us. They signed the civil rights bill to save themselves. It's just like the New Deal. The New Deal was not to save the white working class. The New Deal was created to save the capitalist, the white elites. And so they did the same hustle and scam on us. I will grant you that. And so once they did that, they were like, listen, Black people are going to engage in a second Reconstruction. So they already went through this. It's like, look, we got to emancipate these people, not because we love them, it's because we can't sustain our nation. We can't sustain our economic growth and development. You can't have an antebellum. You can't have an antebellum feudalistic agriculture system in an industrial society. We must industrialize to outcompete France and Britain and all that. We want to build a modern empire, a neo-colonial. And so they didn't just free us because they woke up one day and was like, damn, we've been doing this shit for 200 years. It took us 200 years to figure out how to do right by white folk. So it's the same thing. Black people could embark on a second Reconstruction. And they were like, we already learned the lessons of the past. So it took them over a decade, almost 2 decades, to undermine Reconstruction. And so the neo-Reconstruction that was taking part after the civil rights, they did it in less than half that time. We got rights by the 68, and they started assassinating leaders and all that. So you will notice how many Black people who talk about how bad things are now, they think it's because we got freedom, as opposed to things are bad now because our enemies intensified and made their tactics more sophisticated. And if you understood that our enemies intensified their tactics and their war against us, as opposed to things were just better back then. Why were things better back then? Because we knew how to act. We knew how to talk. We respected our parents. All this mythology with that allows you to condemn and confront Black people or disrespect our civil rights ancestors, but will never put you in a position where you have to confront the true enemy or condemn the true oppressors. And that's my problem with this whole things was better back in the day. They were not better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what a lot of the things that you said made me think about was I forgot who you said it, but loosening up to get a tighter grip.
Dale Jones.
Dale Jones, yeah, like just that. That makes, yeah, I get it.
And so, what I really will mark, the only thing that could be identified as progress with Black people is our collective consciousnesses and identity. That's it. Because presence of house or absence of a home, it's still on U.S. soil. Whether you married or single, whether you got a baby mama or you got a wife, whether you in holy matrimony or you shacking up. The only thing we can really determine for Black people, because one thing about progress or success, anything that is under the direct control of your oppressor, anything that your oppressor can give you or deny you, you can't root yourself in. That's like Black people, well, I'm not going to get married until I got this or this or this or that. Everything on that list about how you choose a partner, how you define what success, it has to be something out of the reach or out of the control of your enemy. So if we're defining success based on anything that our enemies can give us or deny us, we're not successful. And that's another thing that they did to upend us. We had revolutionaries fight for our rights. And then we had reactionaries receive the rights. We had reactionaries receive the rights. Right? So imagine if you and I, or you, me, you, and a conglomerate of other Black people, right, were allowed to define or pick who will succeed in the white community and who will fail. We were able to grant legitimacy and give resources to specific white people that we were able to pick and choose. You know, Noam Chomsky would be president, you know, some shit. You know, Michael Christian Perini would be running Harvard. So that's the condition we've been in. So we fight and progress. And then the rewards or the concessions we fight our oppressors to take, we're like, give us our rights and give us resources and opportunities. And the white man was like, fine, I can't deny them. But okay, here go the resources. I ain't giving it to Malcolm. I ain't giving it to Chairman Fred. Hell, I'm not even giving it to Dr. King. Here you go, Bill Cosby. Here you go, Sammy Davis Jr. Here you go, Barack Hussein Obama. So we fight for concessions, and we never specify who the secession, and we don't retain control over who the secession or concessions come to. You know, when I was in high school, I fought because the school was predominantly black. It was a private Catholic school, but it had predominantly black students. And I'm like, we have to take theology. We have to take Western Civ. We have to take standard American history 1 and 2. And I say, but there's no African studies class. And I was young. I was 15 years old, 6 years old. So they were like, fine, we're going to give y'all a black history class. And it was like, there was one Negro that helped this white man do that. And there was another whole group of Negroes that helped us win World War II. And did I mention a Negro invented the internal combustion coolant system? And all they did would teach in black history, it was great things we did for white folks. Well, a black man made the tungsten filament of the light bulb. Or shouldn't you be proud of how well and how long we've served white people? And guess what? There were some civilizations in Africa that had some of the same things white folks had. They had running water and complex architecture and beautiful, you know, historical contributionism. So I think that we have a distorted understanding of what progress is. And we have a distorted understanding of progress is leading us to long for Jim Crow. But we don't call it. And as long as you don't call it Jim Crow. And it's frightening. It's really disgusting to me. Yeah. And that's why so many black people are just out here really falling into these right-wing rabbit holes.
Looking for very simple solutions to very complex problems.
And they really think they genuinely revolutionary.
That's the part that's just like,
who want to Jim Crow conditions? Well, I don't care. I don't care what our overall status and standing is. I don't care about our culture, our mentality, our self-worth. As long as we got some businesses and 2-parent households and children don't use profanity on public transit, that's all I can hope for. Liberation.
Yeah, but I just wanna add this part too, because I think it's important. I just don't understand how we keep thinking of these inconveniences. And you know, when I was immature, right? Like I thought some of these things too. Like I just don't get how we still think that wearing bonnets is the problem. Like that's the thing. Like I just
forgot about the bonnet.
I just cannot wrap my brain around why. Like, what about the bonnet? Like, I just don't know why we're just so wrapped up in these, you know.
Because the reason we get wrapped up in those debates and discussions is we don't have to confront our actual oppressor. It's deflection. It's like you said earlier. It makes you feel like you're getting somewhere. I call those hamster wheel politics, where you're doing a lot of work and even maybe making a lot of noise, but you're not really advancing.
Hey, well, you know, Danielle has said this a couple things. She says she disagrees. And boom, so Danielle, this is your invitation. I think it's time to open it up, you know, so we can kind of pivot into that. I know I was late and you know, all those things, but let's open it up.
So let me just say this final thing. African people, The present is our current condition is absolutely unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
We should not settle, regardless of our status under this current regime, regardless of our individual or familial standing. This current status quo of global white hegemony and well, it's not even industrial capitalism anymore. Investor capitalism is something we should rage, organize against, and not stop until we subvert it.
Mm-hmm.
But even though our current status is unacceptable, we harm ourselves to idealize the past, and we doom ourselves if we try to return to the past. Forward ever, backwards never. So the solution to the failings of integration, the solutions of failings of desegregation is not neo segregation, not neo Jim Crow. Or now these Negroes want Jim Panther. I'll be militant. I'll live just like my ancestors. I'm not my ancestors. So they don't want to be Jim Panther. They think they can create a Jim, they can create a Jim Panther conditions out of Jim Crow. You know, sprinkle in some Jim Crow, sprinkle in some current, you know. But so our solution is revolution. If we're not making revolution, we are stagnating or falling behind. So I'll say that, and now I'll open it up. I just shared the link. You can click on the link because I know the comments been going off. So the link to come on live.
Danielle Young, I really hope that you click that link and come on to share what we don't.
And I have a few comments that I starred. If we could,
yeah, definitely. I got a bunch of them while we waiting on folks to come in.
So yeah, if you star them, then we can return to them. So the people.
Okay.
But if you want to come on live with us directly, audio or video, just click on that link that I shared, and you can come through. You can share it too. I think you go to invite. Okay, Danielle's here. Okay, Danielle, you're live.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Cool.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
The thing that stating that I disagreed with, apparently, I guess, was the statement you made about people while they're like moving to conservatives and right wing and things like. And following up with that, I said that Black people are feeling hopeless. I think that Black people are trying to latch onto something so that we can free ourselves. And whatever is making sense to them at the time, I think that's what people are following. But I think that that's also a representation of not just who our enemy is on the outside, white people or white supremacy, but how that has affected us and what that looks like internally. Because when you look at the landscape and you look at, okay, well, we're fighting for Black liberation. Well, who's out there? Who's doing the work? What's our defense? What is our defense? Like, what's happening when you say it's revolution? Like, to it as being revolutionary, or what revolutionaries doing? Like, what are revolutionaries doing? How are we to freeing ourselves?
Okay.
If we can't even identify internally our leadership, who our leadership is.
Danielle,
we have a Black misleadership class that.
Can you hear me, Danielle? Hello, Danielle. Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, you're breaking up a bit.
I can hear you now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Because you kind of strung together some statements. I'm not sure if we can kind of re-point your statements on how. First of all, I'd like to say, how are we oversimplifying, and what specifically are we oversimplifying?
Okay, the bonnets, the bonnet statement, or when we initially got onto the housing statement, you know, talking about people wanting to buy homes, and um, I also was on Facebook and I had made the comment about the Earn Your Leisure and the Dr. Claude Anderson. I think that the criticism around that has its place, but I really feel like it's important for people to not oversimplify or over politicize people's desires to want to live a better life for themselves and their
That's
families.
fine, but can you, because you said the bonnet thing, what did, because Skip mentioned the bonnet and I support what he said relating
Mm-hmm.
to the bonnet in the context in which he
Mm-hmm.
brought up the bonnet. Can you tell us what we oversimplified and how we oversimplified it?
So when you bring up things like people wanting to start their LLCs, or people getting upset about the bonnets and things like that, I think it's oversimplification of the problem, or what people see as the problem. Because I think what people are saying is, when you're talking about the bonnet, for example, is we want to have a culture, want to have a type of environment with Black community that we feel proud of. We want to walk out of our home to be and represent ourselves best way possible.
Skip Coon said that the bonnet was
But
not the
there's a
problem,
feeling that we're kind of
but
all over the place.
yeah, some of us are all over the place. I agree with
Yeah,
you on that.
yeah. So
Uh,
so one of the things that I often say is it's like sagging pants, right? Like you say, people want to feel proud.
Mm-hmm.
If nobody
Mm-hmm.
sagged
Mm-hmm.
and no woman wore a bonnet, would our material conditions change?
No. No.
So to be saying that our material conditions are rooted in sagging pants and bonnets is just we're having a nonsensical conversation, right?
Right.
And to say that people want to feel proud about a thing, I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely think that people do want to feel pride. But what does this man sagging pants and what does this woman's bonnet bring up in us that we think white people mistreat us because we're sagging and we're wearing bonnets?
When I hear people have these conversations about the sagging pants and the bonnets,
Mhm.
I guess how I'm looking at it is people are getting caught up in these conversations that are not really addressing the root problem, because they don't see any progress happening in our community.
So let me ask you this.
It's almost like
Okay,
an idle, you know, like an idle mind.
right.
You
So
get what
this,
I'm saying?
but this is the point that I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
So I would challenge you that when people are having this waste of time conversation, to ask if sagging pants and bonnets are going to change our material condition, and then ask the same question that you've been asking of us. Well, shouldn't we be focusing our energies on that?
Oh, I do, of course. But that's, I mean,
But
I'm
but
I've come to this particular platform
okay.
where people who are very clear, at least, on what the problem is and what the issues are and what the solution can be. And so that's why I'm saying, like, while those people might be caught up in, you know, those things that are insignificant, as opposed to us in this arena who are more well aware of what's going on, criticizing those who are talking about things of that nature, I think it's important to look at what are they speaking to?
But that's
Where is the gap here, right? And how we are going about liberating ourselves.
I think what they're
Where
speaking to is I'm sorry, Danielle, but I think what they're speaking to is a desire to gain more proximity to whiteness. and not the
Oh,
liberation that
really?
we talking about.
Yeah, I think it was quite generous where you started off stating that the people out here doing these things, starting businesses and stuff, are trying to get free. I think we take for granted
That's
that
there.
positivity.
Everybody comes to it on their own level.
I
That's
definitely
not that's not how I see. That's not how I
right.
see freedom.
Yes,
But this,
I,
this is
I,
the
I
thing. Hold on,
well,
Diallo. Hold on, Diallo. I want to say this, right? But Danielle, I think this is where this conversation is super important, right?
Mhm.
Because what Diallo argues, what I hear Diallo argue a lot, and one of the things that he challenges me on a lot is when we say that's what we want, we have to first be willing to accept that our idea may be wrong,
Mhm.
right? And then
Mhm.
after we accept that our idea may be wrong, the next step is learning so
Mhm.
we can better address where we misunderstood.
Mhm.
And I
I
think,
appreciate. I'm sorry.
go ahead, bro.
No, I'm saying I appreciate everyone waiting. We're going to get to everyone in the chat, so I
Yeah.
appreciate y'all holding on because the
Yeah.
chat is filling. I mean, the waiting room is
Yeah.
filling up.
But
Oh.
but yeah,
West
Danielle,
Bank, Julius, and L.
Yeah.
We'll get to you shortly.
yeah, but like I think people want to have a business because what they want to do is consume more, right? And then the myth that they want to sell us is, well, as I consume more, I have more resources to do more things in the community. Well, a lot of the things that our community needs aren't necessarily rooted in you giving us $50. And I'm not saying $50 is a bad thing. I'm just saying that a lot of our concerns are not rooted in needing $50.
I'm just saying.
I appreciate.
Can I just say one
Okay.
more thing? Just
Absolutely.
one
You
more
got the
thing.
last word.
My final thing is, my bottom line is, if these people are having these conversations, right? These conversations are being had because there are the progress, as this conversation was about, is about whether or not we're having progress or not. They're not seeing it. And so there are needs that need to be met within the community. And so what should be worked on, what should really be addressed, as opposed to addressing those people in the conversations that they're having, is getting those needs met, addressing the educational issues, addressing the health issues, addressing the housing issues, addressing the political and economic issues. And how are we doing that? Because if people were actually getting their material needs met, they wouldn't be focused on those particular things.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, sis.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go down the line. West Bank, you're muted.
Peace. Can you guys hear me?
Peace. Yes.
Hey, yeah, let me try to keep this short and sweet. You brought up something that really resonated, man, and I've always been thinking about. You know, when people look back to their own like mythical past, like you guys were mentioning, and you know, specifically when you're talking about Jim Crow and even, you know, colonial Africa, right? When people are speaking to these past as if, you know, oh, we were so united and, you know, we were doing this, and it's like, you know, the reason why it seemed like you were united is because they purposefully segregated you, you know, and so it's like there's this legal, you know, doctrine and legal system that kept you away and kept you in a place where they, you know, checked your movements, right? And so what do you guys attribute to, you know, when people talk about this idea that we, you know, we're not united right now and, you know, we were united in the past, like what do you attribute people's lack of, I guess, you know, maybe comprehension skills and understanding of the past? Because again, we have, you know, the internet is here now, right? Like there's this mass access to information and this body of knowledge that perfectly explains the world that we live in, right? And the way that we move and the way that we progress, I guess, or the lack of progress. And we're still at this point where people are saying anytime that they're, you know, someone's challenging them based on real analysis, it's like, well, what are you doing? What's the solution? What's the alternative? And the last thing I'm gonna say is, do you guys get tired of that? Obviously, I mean, you know, it's like, where do you go from that? You know, where do you go from that conversation? that's wait, they're trying to tell you that you're not doing anything. All you're doing is talking.
I just acknowledge that they're right about that. All I'm doing is talking. And I used to run down my resume to people, but I figured out, and it took me a lot longer to figure out than I should have, that when people ask about what you're doing, it's not to assess the value of your work or to never to make a positive contribution to your work. It is just a deflection or to derail whatever argument you're making at the time. And something that allows me to endure that as well is I've actually been to lectures where with Dr. Ben and Professor Mackey, and I wasn't at this particular lecture but I did see a recording of a lecture with John Henry Clark, where someone got up in the audience with these great scholars talking about, well, what do you do? And even Dr. Clark was given a breakdown of a historical breakdown starting to the African antiquity, talking about the pyramids. And some guy jumped up, was like, can you build a pyramid now? So even our greatest people face that. And that is a symptom of the strictly valuing African people by our physical work and not by our intellectual work. And we as a people can watch Europeans build these grand lecture halls and these grand debate halls, and can look at people in Congress and look at people in boardrooms and sky offices and see them run the world without ever picking up the hammer. But when they see a Black person engage in philosophical, ideological, scholarly work to degrade it, from the day we came to this country and from the time our homeland was colonized, Africans were told, you are measured by the beast of burden. You are a beast of burden. And if you are going to use your mind, it should be in games, gambling, sports, and things of that nature. But when it comes to the high-minded, philosophical, intellectual work, leave that to the white boys. And a lot of Black people still have that relatively slave mentality. So I think when someone asks you, what do you do? When you're engaged in doing something that is of value and they don't recognize it, it says more about them than it does me. So it don't bother me.
Hey, can I add one more thing? When what do you guys think of figures like Idi Amin and Siad Barre of Somalia? Right, these guys were basically, and this is tied again into what we think of progress. Even you can add, Barack Obama, right? These guys that were basically, products of these colonial systems. But a lot of us still, look, see these guys in high regard, right? Is there any connection, or am I just kind of maybe far off? Like you guys get where I'm going with this?
Well, yeah, I do. People get mad at me because I like to call that shit out. So there are many. I'm a vegan, so I don't believe in sacred cows. Even though I am a vegan and I do fully support animal rights, I one thing as a vegan I'm willing to do is to slaughter sacred cows. So these certain many of these figures in our history and contemporary are compromised. And even if it's somebody you respect, I don't think you do them a service to their legacy or who they were or what they did by sugarcoating or obfuscating or trying to hide away their flaws. So certain people, I like to joke about Dada Idi Amin because Bobby Wright said, when all white folks are against you, you're doing something right. So Idi Amin was a complex figure. I would assess that he was ultimately very compromised and a negative figure towards African decolonization movement, but I could still acknowledge what that meant, what the visuals of a man like Idi Amin meant to the African continent in the time of decolonization and the way he engaged with our enemies. So I can look at it as totality. I don't really think we need heroes to make heroes of someone, but if someone does something heroic or takes a heroic stance, that doesn't mean that they're heroes in totality. So I just think that we need to stop pretending that these historical individuals were anything other than flawed men who did a thing at a particular point in history. Some good, some bad. Some did a lot more bad than good. I just say we look at them in the totality, learn the lesson that their actions are there to teach us, to feed us, and then from that, like John Henry Clark said, bury the man, continue the plan. We seem haunted by a lot of these figures when we should just put them in their proper place instead of allowing them to haunt us.
Appreciate you, brothers.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Peace.
All right. Thank you, Elle and Julius. Thank y'all for holding on. I know it's been a minute. I really appreciate y'all patience. So, Julius, what's up? Question, comment, criticism?
Can you hear me all right? Hey, just first and foremost, appreciate having the opportunity. Love your platform. Love Black Power Media. I thought it was funny you guys named it EYL. That was hilarious. And legit, one day I just found y'all randomly looking at the other one. So learn more here than over there, trust me. So yeah, y'all do beautiful work. I know, because of the environment, it's a grind, not making millions here, you know what I'm saying? You're just speaking your truths. So man, it's just from the heart perspective. And Diallo, you controversial out here, but hey man, if you're not controversial, that means you're doing something wrong. So but hey, really don't even got much to say. I'm kind of surprised to even be here.
I wish everybody came on like you.
I just saw you on live.
Compliments and encouragement. I appreciate it.
Man, I just saw y'all going live and I seen the link and I'm just like, oh my God. let me try to get up in here. But yeah, I'm out here Midwest, Indianapolis. Man, it's crazy everywhere, you know what I'm saying? The influence of just white supremacy, capitalism, poisons everything everywhere. And I mean, people gonna fall into escapism because the nightmarish reality is crazy. You know what I'm saying? They gonna pick up a Apple headset before they pick up a book. And that's just the unfortunate reality.
But I'd like to one thing. I would like for us to abandon white supremacy and start to say white domination or white hegemony. Because just to come into a position of power over something or to dominate something doesn't necessarily require that you be superior. Cancer cells, right? Cancer cells can dominate your healthy systems. You could have a healthy liver and then you get a malignant cancer cell in your liver. We don't call cancer cellular supremacy, even though it has a capacity to disrupt, dominate, and kill the host. We don't call rapists sexual supremacists because they're able to enforce themselves on someone else. We don't call that sexual supremacy.
Yep.
So
they got so much control over the language,
right. So I we can take back some level of control. So I prefer the term white hegemony or white domination.
Oh yeah.
And again, if Michael Jordan was allowed to walk onto the field with a pistol and a hammer and outscore
Michael
all the
Jordan
other ball
put
chasers,
the Nike sign over the American flag.
Right, but I'm just saying we wouldn't say he was the great player. We would only say he was a great athlete because he was pretty much on the same level, competing with the same with the same standards for everyone else. So if some people give themselves an advantages, additional resources, and manipulate the law, the policies, and weapons, they can't call themselves supreme.
Nope.
That's just a distortion of the word.
And I mean, that's why I feel like, the reality is nightmarish, but in a weird way, it gives us an opportunity to really grapple with situations. It's like climate change is affecting every corner of reality. Water, just air quality, just health and environment, and just unbeknownst to us, it's like, oh, we got a new conversation to have because of this slowly moving catastrophe. And it's, you know, it's a bad situation, but I'm glad we can have a conversation about escapism, about revolutions, which we can have now because the situation and the needs are so great. You know what I'm saying? It's like Gaza is nightmarish, but it's going to be apocalyptic because of climate change.
Right. There's no sanctuary. So I appreciate you, brother. We're going to give you the closing word before we go to our next guest. And I hope you continue to listen and continue to chime in. We're going to always make time to open up for our listeners.
Thank you for your time. Love you, brothers. Be safe out here. And I wish y'all a happy new year.
All right. Happy New Year. All right. We got Elle. Been waiting a long time. Thank you for calling in. Question, comment, criticism?
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. I am just going to say I've learned a lot from your channel. I found it through FD Signifier a while ago, and I've just been listening and following and try to tune in every Wednesday and Monday, but I'm on the West Coast, so my time is a little wonky. Or not wonky, just very behind everybody else. But I just had a couple of thoughts from the first person I heard speak, and bonnets were brought up and things like that, but I think it's really important to be clear about what you're doing. So I have an LLC, but I have no delusions that this is going to be how I liberate myself and other Black people. And so I think that there's a practice of clarity that you have to also embark on when you start to think about seeing the distortions of white hegemony and domination and patriarchy and all those things. And to have those honest conversations and also be in community, kind of like the way you and Skip are, Diallo, to have people reflect back to you when you're being delusional, because it's really easy to get caught up because of all the things that we're constantly being bombarded by. And I was born in Jamaica and immigrated to the West Coast as a child. And like most people in Jamaica have African ancestry, right? The killers, the best people, the meanest people, the nicest people are all Black. And I think that's like a very helpful way in which to view the world, because I can understand that I can have conflict with Black people. And there's a lot of Black people I don't like Kevin Samuels. I'm not sad that you died, right? I would dance on your grave, fine. And at the same time, I realize that there's a liberatory struggle that needs to be taken place, right? And how do I engage in that? And being very serious about how I do that work. My work is working with people, young people, and speaking to them, and like being able to have that conversation about like, oh yeah, no, the Middle East has not been in conflict for thousands of years. Those are mythologies in the books that your parents love to tell you to read. Let's actually look at like history, Sykes-Picot Agreement, British imperialism, right? And so that's how I engage in my revolutionary struggle and practice. And I'm not looking for great men in history, right? I'm not looking to find an icon to be like, that person is the person I will follow, because everybody's doing some revolutionary work in their own way. Like I know people are doing mutual aid for the houseless community in Portland, Oregon, where I live. It's kind of a crisis, kind of is like very, it's a huge crisis, but people are doing that work. I find where I fit in and how I support other people, but I'm not under the impressions that owning my LLC is going to, lead to Black liberation. And I just think it's really important to be honest about what you're really doing. But yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Concise, very clear. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get us in trouble with the manosphere.
Well, I mean, being in trouble with them is...
Well, I've already been called gynocentric. So,
yeah,
I'm trying to
I just want to
shake off that title.
A dude typing mean things to me on the internet is wild. Is a wild way to describe yourself as tough. Like, live your life, man. I'm with you.
Yeah. Delusion.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Elle. I hope you continue to listen and engage with us.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
And I don't want people, I'll have you on in a moment, Mitch. I don't want people to not buy homes. I don't want black people to not to start in LLCs, to start businesses. I don't want black people to not be engaged or have the finer things. You know, I like I don't know what I would do without my oat milk lattes every Wednesday and Saturday morning. So I am not, the finer things in life are not alien to me. What I oppose is distorting the impact of those things.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm against. If something in you compels you to want to buy a nice car and you got the means to do it, but I also believe that your level of consumption is directly proportional to your debt to the larger community. You know, if you're a hyper consumer, all the exploitation, colonization, and labor exploitation that goes into your lifestyle, you better find a way to redistribute and feed back into that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's hilarious to me is I think, you know, when people meet me, one of the things that they are really confused by is like, I'm not some like dirty militant, like man, girl, I wear $200 cologne. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so, and I have an LLC, but I think the difference is folk acting like that.
See, I got an NFT. I'm
yeah,
ready for the people.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, if we just had 40 more LLCs, we'll be in great shape. Like, it's like, man,
that's all it takes.
Yeah,
and
like
our enemies will tremble.
Yeah, like I just, you know,
our enemies would tremble. You know,
yeah, Danielle,
our board of directors on the front line of the battlefield.
Yeah, Danielle, I think that you are asking a lot of questions, and I hope that we have given you some form of relief, and that, you know, the questions that you're asking for, you can really get deeper in the study and start coming up with solutions, because now I think your frustration is showing up and kind of coming off a little bit as disruptive. Like what belonging to an organization does, it gives you a political home, right? Like, and I think it grounds you, right? Like, it gives us an idea of your working framework. We are not going to get out of this situation being more capitalist and more isolationist. Like, you know, I think
you talking to Danielle while Micah's waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry, Micah. Well, I just want to say, yeah, you called that man Mitch. No. Well, I'm sorry. I said, man, you called this person Mitch, and I think that was hilarious. But
I said Micah.
No, you said Mitch. You absolutely said Mitch.
No, I did not.
You absolutely said Mitch. You said Mitch.
Okay,
you did.
We're gonna have to go back.
Yep. Yeah.
Micah, you're live.
What's up? What's up, Micah? I'm sorry, I keep gendering you.
No, you good. Thanks for having me. And Diallo, you definitely said Mitch, but it's okay. It's cool. I'm not holding against nobody. But honestly, I didn't expect to get in. But so my question for y'all is, you know, I'm coming from like a Marxist perspective, right? And I've been introduced in like the last year to, you know, a more Pan-African, you know, analysis of the world. You know, I've always been, you know, in support of like Pan-Africanism, but I've never, you know, delved really deep into any of the literature. And in the last like couple months, I've been going through your videos, Diallo, and, you know, Black Power Media, and so on and so forth. Part of me is very, you know, something that's very appealing about Marxism is this notion that everyone can sort of be united against a common struggle. And from the Pan-Africanist perspective, what I've been getting is, you know, and which I agree with, is that, you know, Black people are to be centered within their own particular struggle, right? And in their own liberation. What I'm interested in is, so you point to like Fred Hampton and his Rainbow Coalition and his efforts to unite people from all sort of backgrounds towards a common goal, towards liberation for everybody. I'm interested in your perspective on that. Because the place that I'm in now, I'm in grad school right now. I just started my first semester, and I am surrounded by white people. There's very few black people in this department that I'm in, and every opportunity I get, I make an effort to preach liberatory politics, and insert very relevant and leftist perspectives into whatever we're talking about. And I have people, white people or just non-black people come up to me and say, how can I help? And
That's the weirdest question. That's such a weird question.
Well, my first instinct is, to go to the Marxist perspective and be like, we're all workers and so on and so forth. But I'm just interested in y'all's perspective. I guess what it comes down to is like, how do we situate other people, other oppressed people, into the liberatory struggle just broadly?
Michael, you black?
Yeah, I'm black.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask, hey man, listen, I don't know, like people be listening to the show. The reason I'm asking, is because when white people ask me what they can do to help, I always tell them do stuff with white people. Like, I don't. You being over here ain't like we don't have the issue. Like we are victims of the issue. So like work with white people about doing things and figuring it out. Yeah, like so. And also I think white people come into our work and our spaces because they're safe. And now like go over there where the problem is. Like don't come over here and get loved up. Go over there and figure out how to organize because we figuring out how to organize over here. Yeah. So
yeah. And it's weird to me when white people come and ask what can I do? Because they didn't have to ask us how to conquer the world. They didn't have to ask us how. They didn't need our instruction, our advice, or our approval to conquer the world. But when it comes to unconquering the motherfucking world, which would seem like an easier task, it would seem like something easier to do. They need Native Americans. They need some Native American mystic. They need some magical Negro leftists. They need some Asian guerrilla freedom fighter. They need some Arabic shaman to tell them how to unconquer the world. When they were able to sit at the Nicene conference. They were able to sit in the UN. They were able to sit in the boardrooms of the IMF and World Bank and figure out all by their loasomes how to do global conquest. That's a weird question for white people to ask. And then another thing that's weird about white folks is when they decide to be good, when they decide to join humanity, they forget how to kill. White people kill whole ecosystems. They drive whole species of animals to extinction on a daily basis. They got nukes. Why when they sitting at home with their white family and they're like, I'm going to pack. You know how you get a stick and you get a bandana and you pack all your stuff up and you tie it off and head to the rail yard. Say, I'm not going to be a part of this. When they leave the plantation, when they leave the multinational corporation, when they leave the motherfucking Pentagon, they don't bring no nukes with them. All they bring is acoustic guitar, sandals. They don't even bring soap. I don't understand. See, I don't understand these progressive white left. Now, I got a special place in my heart for the white left. You know, I've learned a lot from the white leftists. I would not define myself as a Marxist, but I am a student of Marx, and I have learned a lot from Marx, and there is a lot of Marx analysis embedded within my ideology and conclusions about the white world. I think Marx is the greatest snitch in history. We got this notion. One thing Marx did was tell on white folks. And I truly believe that Marx's agenda, even though he was wrong on quite a few things, was to humanize his people, to bring some humanity, fundamentally cooperation and sharing, something that everybody from the pygmies to most cultures had figured out. So I don't know if that's sincere. If white folks like, how do I help? How did you unhelp? You get the nukes, you know how to infiltrate, you know how to undermine, you know how to subvert, and you know how to wipe out swaths of people. Just do everything y'all did against the Arawaks. Did everything against y'all did against the what do you call it? Tanzania. Do everything y'all currently doing against the Palestinians, but do it to Elon Musk. Do it to all the heads of state of UN Security Council. Just when you join your people's infrastructure, go into the or like Fred Hampton said, throw gasoline on yourself and jump on Nixon. If you need, like, I think that's an insincere question for a white person to ask a non-white person. That would be like me going to a woman and say, all this sexism, all this misogyny, my dear sister, how do I help you, my sister? When I walked past my uncle, I walked past my cousin, I walked past my homies, walked past all these sexist and misogynists that I see, that I hear, that I interact with, and I know they sexist and misogynist. I don't want none of my uncles to call me. I'm just using that term, but don't none of my uncles, well, you call me sex. Don't call me Uncle Chris, Uncle Carl, Uncle Clint. Don't call me y'all. I'm just using this as an example. Or I go to queer people. Oh, you LGBTQAI, you're being scapegoated and persecuted. How do I help you? I definitely don't help them by getting a baton in the front of the pride parade or going to try to do the dead drop at a ball. When I ever on my way to go ask the gay person or the LGBTQAI plus person, walk past all of the people out here dehumanizing, calling for, I just was talking to a Muslim today about Sharia law and executing homosexuals. I walk past instead of engaging with these people. So it's weird that how many racists has that white person encountered and didn't do shit before they went to a person who is a victim of racism and white hegemony and say, what can I do? Well, you could have fucking punched, you could have sliced the tires, or you could have said, like I said Monday, these white people sit across the Grand Wizard at the Thanksgiving table and don't even spit in the bowl, let alone poison the bowl. Don't even spit in the food.
Complain about him on Facebook.
And anonymously. So, bless your heart. If you are a white person that just doesn't know how to do right, y'all go to the moon, y'all go into Mars, you know, and Professor
we need some
Mackey
can-do whites. We need some can-do whites.
I just need you to act the same way. Just turn around. Just turn the barrel around. Redirect the missile. Turn the top of the tank. Turn the tank around. Turn the missile. Turn the drone around and go the other way and do the same thing the other way.
And like, not to be this black person, but to say this, but that is also one of the things that we as black people can do to oppose it. Like, at your job, work hard at figuring out how to get black people that have similar political beliefs and ideologies as you hired.
Nah.
Like,
yeah, and when white folks, when Ireland was colonized, the Irish were blowing up everything in sight. They were blowing up everything in sight, and when they got caught trying to blow shit up, they were hunger striking. So we know that when white people want to fight, that we know that white folks know how to fight colonization.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't want to say it's insincere. It just comes off as insincere for a white person, for a person that is higher up on the hierarchy, to ask someone low on the hierarchy, what can I do?
What you were talking about on the show?
I'm sorry.
That's descended violence. That's descended violence. Yeah, like,
right. It's just a weird question to me. I've gotten the question. And for where I do rest above somebody, you go, a wealthy man goes to a poor man. How can I help you? Reach in your goddamn pocket.
Do not
You didn't
kneel
even have to come
in kente
yourself.
cloth. Do not kneel in kente cloth.
So, but anyway, but if you are getting that question, Micah, you know, just tell them, yeah, I think what you did, redirecting them towards Marx or Michael Parenti, or I can't even say that anymore. Ooh, I almost said Derek Jensen, but he left the left.
Oh, yeah.
Derek Jensen, pre-2016 Derek Jensen. There are several. Tell him to go to the ELF, the Earth Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, Extinction Rebellion. There are some white leftists that don't mess around. Tell him to go to Bob Avakian, the Revolutionary Communist Party. There are several groups of white folks that have kind of being white folks, being truly revolution. So I know this don't apply to all white folks. I know and hear of, and there are white political prisoners, Sean
Absolutely.
Swain. There are white political prisoners. There are white anarchists. There are white communists. There are militant white leftists, punch a Nazi, Antifa. So there are white, not every white folks, but so I'm not even really talking about the true and honest white left, because they are putting in work. And there's a lot of effort to distort and make sure that we don't know of each other. They want us to think every black person is on some bullshit, either trying to strive to be a capitalist or sagging pants, bonnet. And they want us to think every white person is either some pissant liberal or a right-wing conservative. But in all communities and all races, fortunately, there are truly left-wing radicals putting in work. I don't know. Is Mitch? Are you still with us, Micah?
Yeah, I've just been listening. I appreciate
All
you.
right. I'm sorry. I don't know if I went over. I'm sorry that I went off on that, but
No, it was intentional. I wanted to hear a rant. I wanted to hear everything you had to say about my.
oh, so you provoked me. You set me off. I don't like being manipulated.
No, but I appreciate
No, I'm
y'all.
joking. I appreciate you as well. Thank you.
It was very insightful, so I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah. Come ask me how I can help.
Man, that'd be crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Because when I was really into music, they'd be like, "How can I help?" I'd be like, "Buy all these CDs."
When you was?
Yeah, like I ain't like out selling CDs like that no more.
Listen, by the time a white person's asking you what they can do, they've already determined they ain't about to give you no money.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I'm not finna waste time going back and forth with you. You can buy all these CDs.
Right.
Or
there's certain times when, they already know, because shit. What am I just going to throw money at the problem?
Yes, that's exactly what you can do. Yeah, bro. This was good, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
We got
I'm about to sign off. You got another 20 minutes to go.
But we'll check in later this week. I can give you the soccer schedule.
Okay.
And then,
are you saying we change our broadcast schedule?
If we can move it back maybe 30 minutes, that could work. But just me getting on late, I don't think it threw it off too bad.
No.
So I don't want to inconvenience you.
But in fairness, right. I told you, man. Forget them kids. Sack your pants, put on a bonnet, and stop raising your son.
Oh, man. Hey, bro. I love you, man.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
All right, close us out, bro.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for patience. Thank you for peace. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for joy. Thank you for community. As we learn and grow together, keep us together. Give us the patience that we need with one another, understanding your grace so that we can be graceful and gracious with others. Amen.
All right. Amun. All right. Till next. Oh, we got some proposals for you too.
Okay. Okay. Hit my line, bro.
All right, bro.
Yeah. Hey, and let's just check in tomorrow.
Okay.
Or when we finish this, just call me. I gotta ask you a couple things, so we'll just check in.
Oh, I gotta. I tonight I got some. some things I do. My night is just starting.
I bet.
My
Well, just
wife
hit me
went
tomorrow.
out. My wife went out to see a play.
Okay.
She's out living leisurely while I'm here, holding down the homestead.
Okay.
So, and my
Yeah, just hit
son,
me tomorrow then.
he's heading to, he's flying out to Miami, Florida, where woke goes to die. I told him that's where woke goes to die.
Oh,
But
man.
I got to get him ready. He's taking a school trip tomorrow, so my night is just beginning. I ain't gonna even get to bed till like 2 a.m.
They
so
flying?
anyway,
Are they driving down?
they flying.
Oh man, y'all rich. Y'all got a rich school.
No, he goes to a public school. He go to a CPS public school. I did. Yeah, when they told us
Not
that,
flying. Not
nah,
flying.
right? The school's flying them. Well, the goodies for like the what is that? Which I don't approve of. That whole holla at me, Pepe. What they call that shit? AP.
Yeah.
The AP honor roll students. So they've got to, trying to incentivize, trying to raise the profile of the school. I told you the school's gentrifying. So, but yeah, he's going on a school trip to where I told him Miami's where woke goes to die.
Yeah, he gonna be out there. He gonna be out there living it up. What you gonna do when that boy come back wearing a white T-shirt,
denouncing the Fidel Castro regime? Coming back. Castro was a baby killer.
What did that devil Castro do?
I've never
said to my family farm.
So anyway, I'm saying that all to say that I'm not trying to duck you. I just got tonight.
Yeah,
my night
just
started. All right, I'll let you tomorrow, bro.
All right, bro.
All right, peace.